the Russian army is fleeing from their positions. Shocking footage has already been leaked online. Frontline, masterclass. The Ukrainian armed forces artillery took out a large enemy column. Drones took out an entire company of occupiers. There's a fireworks display at the enemy positions. An epic breakthrough in Kursk, the Russians are in disarray. Is this really the downfall of Putin's mercenaries? All of this in our episode Hellish Point. The Ukrainian army is hot on the front lines. The artillery is powerfully punishing the occupiers, hitting enemy positions with pinpoint accuracy, while the infantry firmly holds every meter of territory. The Russians simply cannot move forward and admit that failure is near. The most spectacular operations of the armed forces of Ukraine we'll show you right now.
In the Kharkiv region, Baba Yaga carried out a night raid. With a heavy bomber, the border guard struck the enemy's transport and shelters. In the Yastrab, they are firing. FPV drones dismantled the Russians' positions, destroyed a vehicle, and prevented the launch of UAVs. The warriors of the 22nd Mechanized Brigade. Enemy reconnaissance planes were shot down in the sky over the Kharkiv region. The Charter Brigade counted a camouflage tank among its achievements. The enemy shelters also took a hit, along with the infantry who were desperately trying to escape from the drones. The Hiles Regiment showed its combat prowess. The Frontline service station is operating in a 24/7 mode. Transport quickly breaks down due to shelling, mined areas, broken roads. So the fighters of the automotive technical units are doing everything possible to speed up the repair of their iron horses.
This is our Mercedes Unimog, which came under fire from the enemy's artillery, and it was destroyed. The roof was destroyed. The building was destroyed. Here's the opening we have. The car is almost restored. The windshield has been replaced. I think in a couple of days it will start carrying out combat missions for us.
And these shots are from a sniper from the mainland battalion who hits an enemy drone with a rifle. When it's impossible to silence the copters with a REB, sharpshooters are on the alert. In the area of Kremina and Serebryansk forestry, Phoenix drone pilots are practicing against the enemy. They destroyed a tank, a cannon, 1.5 dozen trucks, repeater, and personnel. The attempt at a mechanized assault in the Lyman direction by the occupiers has once again failed. The 66th Brigade timely spotted and neutralized an armored personnel carrier. In the temporary yard, Muscovites enter mostly in small groups, hiding in destroyed buildings and the remains of plantations. And when the number of groups increases, they push towards our positions. The defense there is ongoing under extremely difficult conditions. The enemy is throwing new units into the fight. Our infantrymen from the Royal 24th Brigade are successfully disrupting the enemy's plans. Foreigners are dirty. Street fighting is taking place in Donetsk. Fighters from the 101st General Staff Security Brigade showed how a Russian tried to blow up a house with our defenders using an anti-tank mine device. Fortunately, the detonator did not go off, and the fuse was removed from the small arms. The fighters of the 28th Separate Mechanized Brigade on the Donetsk section destroyed an enemy armored personnel carrier with several strikes from a kamikaze drone.
In the Donetsk direction, the enemy, supported by aviation and artillery, attacked our positions near Krimske, Dakhne, and Toretsk. Konstantinivka and Toretsk were hit by airstrikes. The occupiers tried to transport personnel using vehicles and armored equipment, but they lost a tank and 2 cars.
In the Pokrovsky direction, among others, fighters from the Spartan National Guard Brigade are holding back the onslaught. The occupiers tried to get closer to the Ukrainian positions, but the watchful eyes of the aerial reconnaissance spotted their movements, and the drone operators stopped them before they could advance. The fighters of the 125th Brigade, named after Anna of Kiev, are fighting in AMX-10 tanks. Praise the maneuverability, speed, and quiet operation of the French armored vehicles.
It replaces the wheeled tank, which provides support during assaults and the enemy's retreat. It has maneuverability. We can quickly bend down in one spot, shoot, load, and then leave.
The warriors of the GUR burned the enemy howitzers with a heavy drone near Pokrovsk, along with the living quarters and hideouts of the Russian invaders. The pilots of the Alastor unit from the 25th Sikoslav Brigade have gotten used to working on antennas for enemy drones.
The antenna is actually a complex target. It is small, often, hidden, and actually very difficult to destroy. But it's possible.
In the area of the temporarily occupied village of Dov, the Ukrainian Defense Forces destroyed a thermobaric ammunition storage facility. They also blew up the Sunchain system, the loading machine, and the crew. The Air Forces, with the help of Su-27, MiG-29, and F-16, carried out an airstrike on enemy personnel. The automotive equipment was brightly lit up in the Novopavlivka direction. This is the work of the drone operators of the 110th Brigade, named after General Horunji Mark Bezruchko. They completely destroyed the loaves and cars that the enemy uses instead of armor. With faith in our fighters, Tatiana Litvin, Interdetails, Marca Edini News.
Ukrainian drones have turned the sky in the Donetsk direction into a real hell for the enemy. The armed forces of Ukraine have activated total destruction mode. A Ukrainian development costing $1,000 destroys enemy equipment that is 100 times more expensive. As a result, the armored vehicles are burning, ammunition depots are exploding, and the Russians are afraid to even stick their noses out of their bunkers. The enemy's army wasn't ready for this. They weren't ready. What has become the new nightmare for the occupiers? All the details are in the story coming up next.
Donetsk region, Turkish direction. The safest trips here are at night.
What's here? And a complex target, so to speak, for the enemy. That's the objective.
Here we are at the positions of the Azov drone operators. Here, the final preparations for combat operations are underway. Darts will be operational.
Darts is what? It flies far. And this is what, in principle, strikes the enemy where he is not waiting for the appearance of some drones. So again, we operate deep in the enemy's rear. We work in areas where many resources can't reach, but for us, these are real targets, and that's why it's effective.
This is in my kit. We go with them and the enemy. This is with us. This type is a fragment, and at a weight of 1 kilogram, it causes a lot of pain.
The ammunition, just like the drone itself, is shown to us by a fighter who worked as an architect in civilian life. In 2024, he independently came to the Azov recruiting center. He chose his own call sign.
I was talking to a girl once, and she asked, "What about those normal call signs?" I asked her, "What's a normal call sign?" She says, "Well, Kitty Bunny." I don't think for long. Well, Sunshine. Sunshine is actually a great option.
This drone can fly 50 kilometers and hit a target behind enemy lines with fragmentation, cluster, or thermobaric munitions. The ratio of price to quality is impressive.
Its cost is $1,000, plus or minus 40,000 hryvnias. For this amount, it can hit, for example, equipment worth millions of hryvnias, which significantly hinders the work of newer soldiers. We hit the hailstones, we hit the tanks, we hit the vehicles, electronic warfare systems and similar assets.
Besides the price, one of the advantages of the Dark is its ability to hit both stationary and moving targets.
The most intense operation I had was during this night flight, when at the last moment we spotted a truck. And we managed to take it out.
A port worker, and now also a soldier, with 6 months of experience. He says he chose from several units. I stopped at Azov.
Everyone is motivated. Most of the people are volunteers. And this is a unit where you can fully utilize your skills.
Others who are willing can join the professional companies that are destroying the enemy. The main motivation and desire to learn, they say in Azov.
We are open to collaboration, and we are waiting for new people who want to join us. We don't have standard military training. Our training is specifically Azov's. In the march, you are taught there is an opportunity to go abroad for training, and you are taught by Azov instructors. This won't be general military training. It's specifically Azov's, which is very important.
During our conversation with the Husky, it becomes clear that the darts we filmed hit the target perfectly. The enemy but has lost a few Masniki units of equipment. The enemy's rear has once again turned out to be a very conditional rear. And to make such hits more frequent, you can support the Azov fighters with a donation. On the screen, there's a QR code for artillerymen who need reliable wheels and watchful eyes. Oleg Endrickson, Viktor Zelensky, program Windows STB, Marathon, the only news.
In the Kharkiv and Pokrovsk directions, the legendary Leopards are tearing apart the Russians. The enemy's columns are literally being wiped to ashes. In just a few minutes, several units of armored vehicles are down, and the remaining infantry is simply fleeing. The armed forces of Ukraine have developed their own strategy. The enemy is openly afraid of it, as is evident in our story.
In the winter forest of Donetsk, a strong predator, the Leopard tank, has parked itself. He's definitely not alone here. Even though they can be hard to spot among the camouflage nets and tree branches, the sound of engines from almost every thicket gives them away. There's a whole tank park here. The crew of this Leopard is currently on a break. The warriors have earned it, after they destroyed the Russian shelter almost at point-blank range. Tatar says that even though his Leopard doesn't really like it. The Donetsk mud can even swallow the tracks, but the cannon fires very accurately. That's exactly what the enemy felt.
Yes, of course, they're afraid. They scatter. Because our Leopard, it takes accuracy, speed. Like, if everything is set up properly here, we can hit within a meter and a half at 3.5.
This battleship demolished a building in the village of Sontsivka in the Kurakiv direction at a time when fighting was going on for this settlement. And even though the village is now occupied, at that time the Leopard crew saved our soldiers.
They fired into the basement, where the enemy was, while our troops were above, which allowed our infantry to exit and clear the building.
This was one of Tatar's first outings. He didn't expect everything to go so well. The guy is only 23, but he switched from conscription to a contract. In combat.
Unit. It's not because I wanted to go to war. I was just tired of sitting back there in the rear, while a bunch of guys were out there fighting and I had nothing to brag about.
The Leopards are covering 2 directions at once, Kurakiv and Pokrovsk, the hottest spots in Donetsk. Due to the swarm of Russian drones, the work of the tank crews on the front line has become more complicated. Now, they don't just hold positions, they act like emergency responders. We need to destroy the enemy's fortifications. When our artillery and drones can't handle it, that's when they call for them. Modernization of a foreign Leopard in Ukrainian. Now the guys are stretching the net. It's called Mangle here in the army. It protects the tank from enemy FPV drones. It's a very necessary thing when the enemy's FPV shock is just overwhelming in the front area near Krakovo. But this doesn't protect forever, says Ruslan. He was burning in the tank with a full ammunition load along with the crew. And here are 3 more comrades.
There was the first hit right in front of me, a wave. It almost knocked my hands off the wheel.
Here in the video, you can see a Leopard burning. He was hit by a Russian drone in battle. It broke through the protective net and armor. I destroyed the rep and even the radio station.
Left. We're leaving. Turn around. Turn around, friends. Turn around.
Without communication, Ruslan started to save the vehicle and his comrades in the burning Leopard.
You have so much adrenaline pumping that you don't even think about it. You just hope to make it there with the crew, everything's fine, and we didn't blow up, we had nothing. We were driving and they immediately spotted us, put it out, and the medics arrived. They checked us out.
Here in these shots are the aftermath of the fire. Currently, the Leopard is under repair and the crew has transferred to another battleship. And they're not on duty right now. Because in the Kurakiv direction, the enemy is preparing an offensive in the area of Constantinople. To block the Donetsk-Zaporizhzhia road and push our units out of the outskirts of Kurakovo. So the tankers know that at any moment they could get the command to head out to support our infantry.
The Russian army suffered a shocking defeat in Kharkiv region. The drone operators successfully took out the occupiers. Is that so? A meticulous job? The Russians are literally fleeing the battlefield, abandoning their positions and equipment. Right now, a new story is being written there. Details in the story.
Quick, right.
The second night. Leaving the position is one of the biggest risks right now, so it's only done at night. Even in the darkness, you can see that the whole forest is riddled with shelling.
At 3:30 in the morning, when it hasn't even started to get light yet, the drone operators are getting ready to start their work.
This is a cumulative shell. Basically, this is for targeting vehicles. Light armored vehicles, well, it can also stop an infantry fighting vehicle. If you hit them right, they will take out the tanks.
Charging at the pseudo-Timon, he says that their position is always one of the highest priority goals.
Because if they figure out where we are, everyone will flock here. They spare no effort, launching planes with bombs if needed, especially if they realize we're causing a lot of damage in this direction. Everything will come flying.
I was going to mobilize for the defense forces, and I was thinking about where to go, what to do. There were really no options but to sit around. Sorry.
It's 6 in the morning. Active work begins. The commander, Anizio of the crew, India, who is also the navigator, has been mastering unmanned systems since last year, along with programmers with 10 years of experience.
Here I see it here. Yeah. Hide, you bastards. How did it go? I have to tell you that I can't watch some movies properly right now. Because if there's a scene with a flyover and you can see some forests, and I don't know, about Yari there. Forest belts, for me, these are all landmarks and I'm already used to it.
All the guys in this calculation came from there, even a battalion, thanks to billboard advertising, the commander's media presence, and acquaintances who serve.
I see them shooting conventionally. I don't know Bradley there, and you're so cool, but, well, I'm a little out of it. And then, well, FPI, this topic developed, and I'm like, oh, this is mine. I saw an ad, called them up. It felt like recruiting for a solid company.
Yes, of course, we'll fly now, we'll figure it out. Yes, we're on site, regroup.
It's not even 8 in the morning yet, and there are already hit targets and a few new ones to engage.
Got it. The target was the shelter, the bunker, to whom they hid, according to the information given to us by the adjacent units, about 6 people. We worked right there at the entrance. I think they're not having fun over there right now.
In 3 years of the Great War, Achilles, first as a company, then battalions, and now a regiment, has hit about 22,000 targets.
There was an enemy target hit. Among those significantly targets was heavily armored equipment, which we also have in video confirmations, that we are also proud of, specifically our work.
From dawn until sunset, they didn't leave their workstations. Hands on the controls, eyes glued to the monitors.
And there, they shot at us again from the UAV. I think they probably sent it after us.
Around 5 in the evening, on the monitors you can already see the horizon turning reddish. The sun is setting. The hunt for this crew has come to an end. The night, bombers will take over. And this is not just about hitting targets, but also delivering supplies, water and medicine to the infantry.
Britt, it's already really dark. How much time do we have? A plus B, understood.
When it gets dark, they'll put the canned stew on a camping stove and finally have a proper meal for the first time that day. The Brit will talk about his fallen brother, the youngest Azov fighter, who... At 18, he went through Azovstal in captivity.
When the exchange happened, he was traded, and the guy couldn't stay put and went back. And in 2024, at 21, he died in the forests of Crimea. So we have to do what we're doing now.
We'll be heading to Kharkiv at night as well. In one of the villages, we'll have to run away from the FPV. The sky in the north of Kharkiv was not clear. It's been 3 years.
He's quiet, the photo work is significant. Do you see? Yes.
Maria Malivska, Alexander Brynza, Ihor Serebrian, STB Windows. The only news.
They changed the course of events in the Kharkiv direction. The mysterious Special Forces unit Artan X specifically targeted the Russians. Ukrainian scouts drove the occupiers out of the village even though they were outnumbered. The Russian army doesn't know where to look. From shame, the generals are furious. What, in the end, was the operation that finally drove the enemy out? About all this later.
Step by step, one after the other, through the trees they quietly move forward. Here, the key is concentration, speed, and the element of surprise. Nothing should give away their presence. This is one of the types of mandatory training for the fighters of the Artan X Special Forces unit. According to the legend, the guys are advancing in the victory zone.
Mickey, we're moving out. Follow us.
I'm hiding. Oops, I fell.
Hold the intersection. You film after the column reaches you. You'll be the last one in line.
The instructor says that such training helps to establish a bond between fighters and develops attention.
There's such a war going on right now that we can't just walk around because there are so many drones. First and foremost, it's about observing one another because we can't afford to lose anyone. When they walk and turn their heads, they need to understand that the guy who is following them, we can't lose him.
The guys just returned from combat missions? A few days of rest and back to training.
We review and analyze our mistakes from previous missions so that on the next task, we lose fewer of our comrades and perform our mission more effectively.
The Special Forces unit Artan X was created recently. It's less than a year old, yet the guys have already proven themselves on the battlefield. Until recently, Artan X was classified.
Artan expanded and we got the Special Forces unit Artan X. The first task was in the Kharkiv direction, where we took about 40 hectares of forest. The second task was in Rivnopil. The third task is in the Zaporizhzhia direction, and we've been there for quite a long time.
To get into this special unit, you have to go through a tough selection process. The commander, known by the nickname Favorite, personally selected the first volunteers.
First, it's physical condition. Second, it's psychological state. And third, and most importantly, it's the desire. As of today, we already have 2 companies, and we're forming a 3rd company. The priority is up to 40 years old. We're trying to recruit.
It was the fighters of Artan X who liberated Kamyansky from the occupiers last year in the Zaporizhzhia direction. Then a fighter with the call sign Alik led his group forward.
We moved in groups, clearing everything out. There were times of constant battles, mortars are safest in shootouts. There are mortars, that's something you don't hear in the drone. Some Russians had to retreat, while others had already surrendered to the troops. They drove the Russians out of the village even though they were outnumbered. They were in a frenzy, in a panic. Can you imagine? Out of nowhere, a group of people appears and they just start throwing grenades at the buildings, shooting in bursts. They come in shooting from machine guns, just kicking down the doors and starting to shoot. What can be done? They didn't expect anything from there. Nothing.
The uniqueness of this special unit is that all the fighters are released under the UDO. Shiloh had previously served his mandatory military service, and when he learned about the opportunity to join the army, he didn't hesitate.
When we were being selected, we talked. I was asked why I wanted to join the YAO ranks, the Armed Forces of Ukraine. I replied that, to me, no matter who they went to, this is our land, our state. I want to be among my brothers in arms who are a support for me.
And the Swede has ATO behind him. He says he initially looked for options on a large scale to get into service.
I probably filed about 50 applications. I wrote to the courts and the prosecutor's office. But I never received any responses. And only when I ended up in the colony was I able to take advantage of the new law and get here. I had 9 months left until my freedom.
Could you have waited it out? I could have, but I didn't want to. There are many guys without previous combat experience, and among them is a fighter with the call sign Mokri. He was one of the first to get to Artan X.
At that time, it was my dream to join such a unit. So, I took advantage of that opportunity. I am proud to serve here, defending our homeland.
Wet and his comrades recently returned from the front, and their daring special operation, where 8 soldiers held the defense of their positions, has already gone down in the history of our war.
The task was to prevent the enemy from advancing. Next, we took up combat positions. Right at the outskirts of the village, we built a defensive line. In the facade, they occupied 3 sectors, from which danger came.
And so, after 5 long days, the Butinka Russians learned that the mountain fighters had entered the position and had thrown all their forces there. But the guys held their ground.
The assaults came first from one flank, then from the other, and then even from all 3. I can tell you, it adds confidence. The look on your brothers that you meet, looking at him during the fight, seeing confidence in him, seeing this rush, the adrenaline, this gives you the strength to continue the fight and not to worry about the flank.
On the last day I got injured during the retreat. He will take pride in this special operation because the guys carried out the order. And we didn't lose a single fighter.
Drones were constantly above us. When they spotted us, our group came under heavy mortar fire. We had to move quickly. I found my second wind and ran on both. I'm the only one who got a minor injury.
These guys are carrying out tasks from the main intelligence directorate. They are already feared. The occupiers, because after months of active fighting, the soldiers of Artan have proven their effectiveness. And the plans for life after the war are the same as for all other Ukrainian fighters. Simple and understandable.
We young guys, we also want a quiet family life, some family fishing, conversations around the fire, camping trips in peaceful forests where no one will run out at you. Yes, of course, we want that. These are our dreams, but for now they are far away. Our top priority dreams are for our Ukraine to be at peace and independent.
Lyudmila Havrilyuk, Alexander Petrovsky, We Are Ukraine, Marathon, the only news.
The Russians are fleeing not only from Ukrainian lands, but also from their own territories. The armed forces of Ukraine are terrorizing the Russian army in Kursk. The occupiers are crying crocodile tears right in the trenches while Putin is trying to hide the number of casualties. This has never happened before. How did the Ukrainian defenders make the Russians beg for mercy? About this in our material.
They broke through the defense and advanced deep into Russia. The armed forces of Ukraine have launched a new counteroffensive in the Kursk region, and they have already shown a high result, advancing to the southeast of Sudzha.
According to various estimates, Ukrainian units have managed to advance 5 to 7 kilometers deep into Russian territory.
Under the control of the armed forces of Ukraine are the towns of Cherkasy, Konopelka, Ulanka, Kulmakova, and Fanasievka. The enemy used these settlements as key defense points.
The Ukrainian counteroffensive, in addition to the surprise factor for the Russian side, has the goal of expanding the zone with the presence of the SOU in the Kursk facility.
And this could become that very trump card in future negotiations for both Putin and Western partners.
Kursk is a very strong card in all negotiations, especially with countries, that are very important to us, especially with the countries of the global south.
For the countries of the global south, the successful operation of the Ukrainian defense forces is a vivid testament that the Russian army is unable to carry out its operations in the south under control of territories, in Donetsk or accordingly. And on.
Putin's propagandists in Russia are going into hysterics. The new offensive could threaten the rear areas south of Sudzha and complicate the Russians' ability to cut off Ukrainian ground communication lines.
Today's went. The main counteroffensive is for the workers.
Next, the leader of the TikTok troops, Abdiel Audinov, began to tell how, somehow miraculously, his troops had once again avoided the SSU. The servant of Putin complains that the Russian Ministry of Defense does not recognize his merits to the homeland.
The only ones who don't acknowledge us at all are our department. I don't understand why this is happening. They believe that if they don't notice this Ahmar, it will cease to exist after that. And at the end of the Vita, you probably already have some kind of conscience. How long can this continue?
This is not the first offensive by the Ukrainian defense forces in the Kursk direction. And perhaps such tactics during periodic breakthroughs are effective. In 6 months of operations, the total losses of the enemy amounted to about 40,000 people. Of them, over 16,000 Putin soldiers have been killed.
That's all from me. It was me, Darina Hutsalo. Even more hellish news from the front in our next episode. Well, in the meantime, don't forget to subscribe and give a thumbs up. See you